There's nothing worse than missing people. With the family, if someone dies, you know what happened to them. In missing person cases, you're not sure what happened to them, so there's little to no closure. You're always wondering what happened. And the bad thing is, as part of the family, there's a lot of suspicion thrown on you as to whether you were the cause or not. So not only do you have the agony of having a missing family member, you also had to deal with the criticism and extreme scrutiny of others. I found several cases where that very thing happened. On February 24th, 2019, Brittany Davis, she was celebrating her 23rd birthday. She planned to spend the weekend celebrating with her husband, Tyler Davis. They had a son that was 20 months old. With their hectic work schedules, Brittany as a bartender and Tyler as a Wendy's manager, they worked late nights. The two rarely had any time alone. The couple made it a point to schedule a 3-week getaway every year, one for each birthday and one for an anniversary. They decided to go to Columbus, Ohio, and Brittany hadn't been there before. So they made reservations at the Hilton Columbus. They left their son with Tyler's family. They continued on to Columbus, and they checked into a hotel around 5 p.m. A friend of theirs went with them. His name was Sean Hughes. He was a close friend of Tyler's. The couple and their friend went to a few bars, and they looked around the area until about 3 a.m. So they decided to go back to the hotel. Then Tyler started acting strangely just before his bizarre disappearance. 3:30 a.m. Tyler's on his way home. When he gets home, Brittany and him chat for a bit before heading to bed around 5 a.m. At around noon, they planned on meeting Tyler's parents and drop off their son for the weekend, but they slept later than planned. Around 12:30, they woke up and got ready. They met his parents at a Texas Roadhouse, and they stayed there for some time, till about 3:30 p.m. After stopping at a speedway, they were ready for their journey to Columbus. They checked into their hotel around 5 o'clock p.m. Their friend, Sean Hughes, arrived around 6:30 p.m. That way he can join the celebrations. Tyler gives Sean a room key, just in case they got separated during the night. At around 8:30, the trio leaves the hotel to check out the Easton Town Center. After about an hour of exploring, they stopped at Bar Louie to get a drink. According to the reports, Brittany had 2 drinks, and Tyler had half a drink, and the three took shots together. They stayed for just under an hour before moving on. They went to a place called Adobe, which was another bar. They paid their tab around 11:30 p.m., and they didn't leave until midnight. After leaving Adobe, they were going to head back to their hotel, but their night wasn't over yet. Brittany suggested they go to a strip club called the Dollhouse. The Dollhouse seemed to be a very popular venue. It had 4.5 stars. They have a large selection of rare, top-shelf vodka, scotch, and beautiful women. They arrived there around 12:45 a.m. Tyler and Brittany talked to one of the girls as they bought drinks, while Sean is off doing his own thing. At one point, Tyler and Brittany go outside to smoke. At around 2:30 a.m., Tyler and Sean got into an argument with the bouncer, who wanted them to leave because it closed at 2 a.m. They argued that they were waiting for Brittany, who went to the bathroom. Brittany meets them outside, and they order an Uber to go back to the hotel. The Uber arrived around 3 a.m. Sean sat in front, Brittany sat behind him, and Tyler sat behind the driver. Now Tyler and Sean both fell asleep, but the drive back was only 18 minutes. When they arrived at the hotel, Brittany wakes up Sean first. Then they both wake up Tyler. Brittany said Tyler was grumpy when he woke up. They got out of the car and Tyler stumbled, seeming confused and disoriented. He asked where they were, and he said they needed to get back to the hotel. Brittany said he seemed groggy, exhausted, and confused. She also said he was aggravated, like he was mad like they weren't where they're supposed to be, even though they were in front of the hotel. Tyler starts to walk away. Brittany's about to follow him, then Sean offered to go instead. Her phone was at 4%, and after charging her phone for a minute in the room, she went back downstairs to see if they returned, but there was no sign of them. She tried video calling Tyler, but he didn't answer. It was around 3:37 a.m., about 20 minutes after they arrived at the hotel. Tyler calls Brittany and he apologizes, said he was just walking around the block, smoking a cigarette and cooling down. He tells her that he will see her soon. Then Sean returns to the hotel alone and tells Brittany not to worry. Tyler was just blowing off some steam. Around 4:10 a.m., he still hasn't returned. He calls Brittany again and says he's walking through the woods and that he can see the hotel. And he tells her he will be there in 5 minutes. 1 minute later, Brittany receives another call from Tyler. But after only 4 seconds of silence, the call goes dead. She immediately tries to call him back, but it went straight to voicemail. When they were leaving the dollhouse earlier, she remembered that Tyler's battery was low, and she assumed that his phone was dead. At this point, the security footage caught someone walking towards the entrance. It was around 4:15. It looked like Tyler, but on further investigation, they discovered it wasn't Tyler, it was Sean. She decides to walk around the area near the Hilton to look for Tyler. And it's not long before that her phone dies. She returns to her hotel to plug it back in. At this point, she's beginning to call hospitals, jails, and friends trying to find Tyler. One friend, being their former roommate Adam, comes to help Brittany, although there's still no sign of Tyler after 10:30 a.m. Brittany calls Tyler's parents, and his father comes and joins the search. At around 11:15, Tyler's mother tells Brittany to call the police and file a police report, which she does. The police arrive around noon, and the group started searching for Tyler, but there was no sign of him. The dogs hit on a pond in the area, so they searched it with the dive team and with sonar, and they came up with nothing. The Columbus police did admit to dropping the ball because they believed that Brittany had gotten into an argument with him, which resulted in him running off. And this is why they waited 3 days till after he disappeared. New audio files released to the conference showed that Tyler asked his phone how to get back to the hotel. Detective Brammer said, "What it showed to me was intent. It showed to me that Tyler wasn't trying to go sneak off and have his life somewhere else. That shows me I want to go home." Unfortunately, he was never found. There's a lot of theories as to what happened to him. Some think that Brittany and Sean planned on murdering him, but all the evidence seems to be consistent with their story, even with them arguing with the bouncer, which was caught on CCTV. The people who know them knew that they had a pretty stable relationship, and according to his parents, he was a family man. He would have never left his daughter. So what really happened to him? Was it really an elaborately planned murder? Was he abducted? The bad thing is, we don't know. All we can do is guess, until we can find either his remains or he's found alive. Chance Englebert. Him and his wife Bailey, they had an infant son. They were visiting Bailey's family in Nebraska. It was a 4-hour drive from their home in Wyoming. On Saturday, July the 6th, 2019, Chance, his father-in-law, and his brother-in-law decided to go golfing. The group was drinking, and something was said that upset Chance, to the point that he was going to call his wife to come pick him up and request to go home and end the visit with the in-laws. Brittany said it was a mistake over a comment about Chance's job, and he took offense to it. She said that he was drunk, and she couldn't talk any sense into him. She picked him up and returned to her grandparents' house. There they started gathering their belongings. Chance told her that he didn't want to be there, that he wanted to go home. Around 7:30 p.m., Chance gets out of the car that is parked in her grandparents' driveway. He walks away. Brittany runs inside to give their son to her grandparents, and she goes back outside, but lets him go because she figures he's trying to cool off and that he would return. In an interview with Dateline, Bailey said that he gets mad and he would walk to cool down, but she didn't think that he would go that far. He just kept walking until she couldn't see him, but she didn't think it was serious. From there, Chance vanished in the thin air, despite being caught by surveillance video in Terrytown later that night, which has left many to wonder whether he left his life behind or if something sinister happened to him. Chance was only 25 years old when he disappeared. He and his 20-year-old wife, Bailey, met back in 2017, and after only a year of dating, the two got married in 2018. Their son, Banks, was born May 2019, making him only 3 months old when Chance disappeared. The friends and family of Chance said that their relationship was rocky at times, which is quite common for just being married for 2 or 3 years. But otherwise, Bailey said they had a great marriage. Chance's family described him as a hard worker, and he was an all-around good guy. He loved the rodeo, he loved to ride horses and bulls bareback, which he did competitively. He also enjoyed working on derby cars, and he got extremely excited when he found out that she was pregnant. She said that he would never leave his baby. His mother, Dawn, said that he was excited to start a new job that Monday after getting laid off from his previous mine job. He also had plans to pick up a package for his parents later that afternoon. Those who knew Chance didn't think he would just simply walk away and have no intention of returning. Bailey said she thinks whatever happened was really bad. People just don't vanish. Something happened to him. After he walked off, Chance called a good friend, Matt Miller, and he asked him for a ride. He told him he was walking down the highway, and that's where he can come and get him. But Matt was drinking, and he couldn't come himself, but he said he would try to find him a ride. Matt texted Chance's mother and asked her to call him. She did, and Matt told her that he just got off the phone with Chance, and he had a little run-in, and he wants to get out of there. Chance's family started calling and texting him, trying to figure out what was going on. His Aunt Katie said she called him and he didn't answer, so she texted him. He responded an hour later around 9 p.m., which was the last time anyone heard from him. Several months later, on December 27th, the police discovered that there was no activity on his phone after 10 p.m. It was only an 8-minute walk away from her grandparents' home. The night Chance disappeared, his mom spoke with Bailey, and they decided to come help search. But Bailey still didn't think it was a problem, and that he would come home. Chance's family lived in South Dakota, and by the time they arrived, it was dark and it was difficult to see. Plus, they assumed that he would turn up once he cooled down. Unfortunately, Bailey and her family were forced to stop searching because it was a severe storm that swept through the area, causing tornadoes. The rain that night was very heavy and cold, which added more danger to the situation, seeing that they had lightning and flooding. Bailey assumed that he took shelter at a bar and that he would be okay, but when she woke up, Chance still hadn't returned. She knew something was wrong. When Chance hadn't returned by Sunday morning, Bailey filed a police report around 11 a.m. His parents were still confident that he would show up later that day. On Monday, July 8th, the police began the search. She said initially the police thought that she was involved. Bailey said at first the police felt that initially he was just another drunk who stormed off. On Tuesday afternoon, Captain Rogers asked Bailey and Dawn to come to the police station. The two were worried, but all they told them was they had no sign of Chance. Then something odd happened. Bailey asked about a death certificate. It was kind of confusing for Dawn and the captain, because they still think that he might be alive, and found it odd that she would want one so soon after the disappearance. Here's what the search was consisted of. 147 people were participating on the ground search, covering over 2,400 acres. They also had someone in the air cover over 380 miles trying to locate him. They had sonar, canines, and they checked 10 lakes and ponds. In addition, they checked the rivers, riverfront property, irrigation ditches, and canals. Nothing that belonged to Chance was ever located. His mom said that she never felt that Chance would leave his family. There hasn't been any updates in his disappearance. The family and friends tried to get the FBI involved, saying that it should be investigated as a homicide, but there's no evidence of foul play. Now here are some of the theories. The most popular one is that Bailey's family did something to him. A lot of people were blaming the wife Bailey for being involved in his disappearance, especially since it was odd that she was asking about a death certificate so early. One is that he ran away because of all the stress created by his in-laws. He was obviously agitated that night, or maybe he was abducted. We can't really be sure. If he walked off mad and succumbed to the elements, it would be easy to assume that he would have been found by now. Another one is someone picked him up and killed him. Until we get more information, we'll probably never know what happened to Chance. Juan Pedro Martinez was a 10-year-old boy. He was an only child of his parents. He liked to accompany his father on travels, Since his dad was a truck driver, he was told about cows grazing on green grass, and he wasn't used to that, since he lived in a semi-desert environment. He made his father promise that if he got good grades, that he would obligate himself to take him on the next delivery and be able to see this for himself. Well, he did. So his father Andre and his mom decided to accompany him one day. That way she could also watch over the kid when he had work to do. After dropping off his car and getting his truck loaded, they were off, just the three of them, cruising down a road in a Volvo tanker. Later on in their journey, he was witnessing doing things erratically. He would drive very slowly, and then he would stop in some sections, at some points over 20 seconds. Then eventually he went up to 110 kilometers per hour, and it looked like his brake system gave out. He rammed into some other trucks and crashed. The thing is, he was hauling sensitive material, which started to leak and got into the cab. This was during the daytime, and it was reported that the roads were clear, and it was a nice sunny day, an easy drive. The roads were straight and flat. What makes this really odd was when the other three trucks stopped close by, a white van also stopped. One of the truck drivers encountered two people, both of them really tall and pale. The man approached the truck driver and told him that his wife is a nurse. She proceeded to quickly check out the other truck drivers before making a beeline to the truck cab with the boy and his two parents. Then she was seen removing something from the cab, getting into their van and driving off. Why was he driving so erratically? What caused him to speed up and run into the other trucks and crash, thus killing himself and his wife? But the kid came up missing. He wasn't found. Some people suggested that the sulfuric acid ate up his remains, but that would have left some kind of genetic material behind, and there was nothing. Did the two people who arrived take the boy and run? So what happened? Earlier that morning, they went to a restaurant to get breakfast. The waiter could easily recognize them from their picture. He said they were acting fine. They weren't in a rush. They paid their tab, slowly got in their truck, and drove away. When they examined the truck, the brake system was fine. As a matter of fact, apart from the wreck, they couldn't find anything that would cause him to drive so erratically except for on his own. So what caused the father to act so weird? Some people said it was drug related, but there was no evidence supporting this. Some people have gone as far to suggest that the tall pale couple were actually aliens, but no one really knows what happened. This happened well over 30 years ago, and there's still no trace or sign as to what happened to the kid, or why he was driving so erratically. They didn't seem like they were in any kind of rush just shortly before when they left the cafe. Until new evidence arrive, we'll never really know. Thank you very much for joining me for The Creeper. Those are some pretty strange cases. What are some of y'all's thoughts? Leave it down in the comments. I like to read them. I want to give a special thanks to my patrons. Your help is greatly appreciated. If you want to become a patron and help support this channel, just follow the links down in the description. Well, I hope you all have a good day, and until next time, this is Dallas, signing off.